Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final class in the Energy Healing Workshop series. Today, we are talking about protection. My name is Kristen, and I am a Reiki healer and teacher, and also a spiritual life coach and the founder of Roots of Radiance Reiki. And super excited that y'all are here, whether you're here live or watching the recording. Really excited to be able to share some tips and tricks about how we can better protect our energy. Yeah. So before we dive too much deeper in, I'd love for us to just do kind of a landing practice, grounding and kind of reconnecting with ourselves. I know that protection to me does often involve grounding, and I guess it makes me think of trees with super deep roots are often able to weather and be protected through tumultuous storms and winds because they are deeply rooted, and really grounded. So even though we're talking about protecting our energy today, there is still aspects of grounding that we're going to be bringing in. All right. So, as we prepare to land in this space, I'd love to invite you to maybe put your hands on your heart, put your hands on your body somewhere, and just come back into connection with yourself. Maybe as we do this, you want to bring your eyes away from the screen and just start to look around your room, landing in your space. Maybe that just looks like looking up towards the ceiling at the corners, just getting a sense for where you are right now. And as we come back into connection with our physical selves, with our physical space, I invite you to tune into your breath, just allowing yourself to breathe here, not forcing your breath to do anything, just feeling the way that it naturally expands your body, creates more space, and the constriction that happens after when you release, just letting ourselves breathe and connect here. Whew. And as you continue to breathe in and out, maybe you want to give yourself permission for your breath to take up more space in your body. Maybe that looks like inviting the breath to fill up to your shoulders, your upper chest. Maybe that looks like inviting your breath into your lower regions, your belly and hips. Just allowing our breath to help us take up space. Feeling the space inside of our bodies. As we continue to breathe here, giving ourselves permission to take up a little bit more space, maybe we also want to imagine that as we exhale, the energy that moves out from our body creates kind of an energetic force field around us. As we breathe out, that energy that was once within us, that we're letting go, fills the space around us, offering some extra energetic protection in the space around our bodies, the space where our energetic field is. Hmm. And as we begin to bring this landing practice to an end, I invite you to bring any kind of intuitive movement that maybe your body is craving after that breath work. Maybe you want to give yourself a little hug or a little squeeze with your hands on your body still. And I'll invite just a little movement here. Letting ourselves stretch and land. And if our eyes closed while we were doing that practice, maybe we want to bring our gaze once again around our physical space, letting our minds, our physical body, our energy know where we are right now. And then as you feel ready, you can just bring your gaze back to the screen or continue looking around your space as I speak. Mm. Love to give us just a moment here to just notice how we feel now compared to when we first joined in. Noticing how a little bit of intentional breath work can really shift our energy, shift how we feel, maybe even shifts feelings of safety, our sense of safety. Awesome. And if anyone wants to share in the chat or come off mute and just share how that felt for them, that is totally invited. Mhm. All right. So here today we're talking about protecting our energy, how we can protect our energy. And I want to name that simple practice like we just did, breathing, physically looking around our space, connecting with our physical body with touch. Those are three very simple ways that we can tune into our energy and protect our energy. I think it's really common nowadays because we spend so much time on our phones, on our screens, in this kind of digital land that we can forget to look around our physical space. And when we're talking about creating feelings of safety, creating energetic protections, that visualizing, like physically seeing where we are, can offer a lot of safety for our nervous systems, for our bodies. Because it lets us know where we are. We know where the exits are. We know where the light is entering. All of these things, they seem really subtle and little, but they can increase our sense of safety, especially when we are on our phones, when we are on our screens. We can be pulled energetically, right? Even though we're physically still sitting in our room, we can be pulled into so many different circumstances because we're reading about what happened, we're watching what happened, we're reliving someone's dinner, whatever it is. Our energy can be pulled in a lot of directions. And so letting our gaze come up from the screen can offer our energy a grounding and a protective factor. I think it's really important when we think of energetic protection to remember that energy is really fluid, right? So our energy can be really impacted by things that are not in our physical space, by things that are happening on a collective level, by things that are happening in our neighborhood. And so our energy can be really, really susceptible to what's going on in the world around us. Even if we're physically inside of our house or physically inside of our car, our energy is still impacted by what's happening. And so being connected with our physical space can help us to be aware and protect our energy. Because I think for me, at least, so much of my energy protection routine really came out of becoming more observant of myself and noticing how I felt in different interactions, right? So noticing how I felt when I'm in a grocery store that's really busy and buzzing, or noticing how I feel when I'm like in the woods taking a hike, right? Where one, I'm feeling really relaxed, and maybe the other, I'm feeling kind of this heightenedness in my energy. And so when I notice that, I can say, hey, maybe I need to do some protection before I go into the grocery store, before I go into these shopping retail locations. It makes me think of like sunscreen or bug spray, right? So when we're going to the beach, or we're going to be out in the sun, we're like, oh yeah, I have to put sunscreen on. And often if we're in the sun all day, we know that we have to reapply it, right? It's not like we just put the sunscreen on and then we're good to go. We can still get burned if we don't continue to reapply the sunscreen. And so in the same way, when we're doing any kind of energetic protections, it isn't necessarily something that's just one and done, right? We might need to continue to almost like reapply the protections depending on what this situation is. And so one of the big ones for me is just a simple like zipping up of my energy, right? Physically, like actually like zipping myself up. You can do a little lock. There's also ones where you can imagine that you're putting on like a big, almost like a big winter coat, like energetic winter coat protection. And then imagine that you're zipping that up. These visualizations paired with like a physical kind of like closing almost can be really, really potent, right? When we're talking about protecting our energy, to me at least, so much of it really does come down to like the intention setting and then some kind of like conscious boundary setting, right? Where whether it's verbally saying out loud, please reestablish my personal boundaries, I intend to reestablish my personal boundaries right now, or whether it's visualizing, right, that coat, that zipping up, visualizing a cocoon around ourselves. So much of our energy protection, it is in this like non like physical world, right? It's in this like imaginal, energetic, like intentional space, right? Where we can totally put on protections like the sunscreen and the bug spray. And so we can use things like essential oils or crystals or smoke and different things like this to offer us protection. But without those tools, so much of it comes down to like the power of our own intention, our own heart wisdom, so to speak. Um, yeah, so consciously setting our boundaries, trusting that when we set the intention, like when we say, for me, so much of protection really is about like almost like spell casting, right? Like saying it out loud, like asking my highest self, asking guides that I work with, asking the Reiki energy to help protect me, right? There is this aspect of prayer that's sometimes involved in energetically protecting ourselves and asking for support, whether that's from our guides, from our highest self, from ancestors. There is oftentimes, yes, this aspect of like we're kind of like putting the onus out there, putting the intention out there, and asking for the support. And I think that it's really easy sometimes to kind of like write those things off, like, oh, it seems so simple, like it can't be powerful, right? But I know that as someone, so I used to work in retail, I used to work at Trader Joe's, super high energy space. And I noticed a huge difference when I went into that space on days when I like consciously called on my protections, consciously like zipped myself up or imagined myself inside of a cocoon versus the days that I skipped those practices and just went in. And I'll say that like what happens is when my energy is protected, I'm able to stay much more connected with myself, with my priorities, right? And when I'm not protected, I'm much more pulled around. I feel a little bit more manic, or the overwhelm builds a little bit more. And so again, like these protections, it is a lot of noticing and adjusting, right? So noticing what happens when we do a certain kind of protection and being like, dang, that worked really good. And then maybe we try a visualization of yeah, like a crystal or a cocoon around us, and maybe that doesn't work so good. And so some of this is definitely like experimenting, noticing, and then readjusting when needed. Um, it's also one of those things where I think it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna do it right, right? If we're talking about setting intentions, we're talking about, spell casting, right? It's like, oh, am I doing it wrong? Do I have to say particular words in a particular order? And I would say truly like trust yourself, right? Trust that what comes out is what needs to come out, and that the energies will understand. If you're asking for protection, again, like it again reminded me of the sunscreen where it's like SPF 30, SPF 50, SPF 60. Like, it's like I've heard of many different things from many different people on what the difference of those things are. And yet using one of them, regardless of the number, is going to be better than going without, right? And so just trust yourself to yeah, call on the protection in the way that's perfect for you. So I've named a couple like specific techniques, right? So zipping up was one, visualizing or setting protective fields. That one is I think a huge one. A friend, when I first got introduced to energy healing, a friend introduced me to one where she would like call on like different colors of light and ask them to kind of surround her. So she'd be like, oh, could I call on like, a purple light of protection to circle around me and protect me from that, which doesn't serve my highest good. And she would just do that regularly. And as she felt called, she would add different layers. Like sometimes she would add like a layer of like, I think she had one that was like a pink light of transmutation to help transmute like negative energies that come her way into loving vibrations. Or even just like a white light of protection that surrounds us, and visualizing that, right, even if it's just like a moment or two, just visualizing the light coming online and then moving forward. And again, right, as we do this, it's so important to notice, how does it feel different when I visualize and activate the light before I go into the meeting versus when I went into the meeting and I didn't do that. That's where we're going to really um see the protection at work, right? And gather evidence for the ways in which these different energetic protections work or don't work for us. Um, and again, the calling on the support and the prayer. I know as someone who works with Reiki, for anyone else who's watching who works with Reiki, calling on the Reiki energy for protection is a super potent practice for me. I do it on the road a lot. I'll ask it to fill the car that I'm driving and to fill the space around the car when I'm driving. And I notice a huge shift when I consciously remember to do that in what my experience is on the road versus if I forget and I just like go and I like don't put those protections in place. There's much more, I'll call like mania around me when I don't put the protections in place, and a lot more like spaciousness and more like calm energy around me when I do put the protections in place. It's really quite interesting and profound. Um, and so again, the calling on the support, visualizing or setting a protective field, physically zipping ourselves up. And then really simply like one that I like did a lot like in my head was just saying highest self, please help me reestablish my personal boundaries. As just like a practice of, yeah, again, reestablishing our personal boundaries. Because again, so much of protection um, to me does on an energetic level feel like boundary setting, which kind of leads me to the other thing that I wanted to talk about on protection, which is that many of us, especially folks who are highly sensitive or empathic, we tend to live with very wide open energetic fields. This isn't necessarily a conscious thing. It's more so like when our energy fields are really big like that, it allows us to pick up a lot more information. And so for those of us who are really sensitive and really used to kind of anticipating the needs of people around us, we tend to have our energy open like that because it helps us to better kind of predict what the needs of the people around us are. So this is a skill that has served us, many of us. And it can also be really hard then to protect ourselves when our field is so big and so open. And so practicing physically like pulling our field closer, right? Or visualizing that we're pulling our field closer can be a really poignant practice, especially for folks who identify as empaths and for folks who are highly sensitive, and for folks probably honestly who are introverts as well, because again, we're just super sensitive. And so allowing our field to come tighter to us is another way that we can protect ourselves, right? Because when our field is nice and tight, and again, I don't see this as a shrinking, right? I see this as a condensing. Think of there's those balls that like are webbed that can get really small and then they expand, and it's the same amount of matter, but it's just denser, right? So this isn't about making ourselves smaller when we pull our energy field in. It's really about bringing our field closer to us so that everyone else's stuff isn't necessarily interacting and melding with our own energy. So being able to pull our energy in is a huge thing. And I'll also name for folks who are highly sensitive and empathic, if we're used to having our field really open, it can be very unnerving when we start to pull our field in and exist in that more kind of like dense, tight energy space. And again, this is a lot because we're used to being able to feel into all of these things that are happening around us because our energy is so wide. And so it can feel, again, like unnerving or almost like we've disconnected somehow. So I just name that to say that like I had that experience when I began this practice of protecting my energy, that I had to get used to what it felt like to live almost like in my own sovereign energy as opposed to in relationship with every single thing that was around me at all time. So it is something that we practice, right? That we'll learn and notice more. Because again, protecting our energy is sometimes about looking within, right? Tending to ourselves rather than like being available to meet everyone else's needs. Um, Yeah. Okay. So I've just said a lot. And I want to give space if there's any comments or any questions from folks who are here live. If you want to drop anything in the chat or just come off mute. And if not, that's cool too. Just give me like a thumbs up or a wave. Okay, cool. All right. So I've said a lot about different practices for protecting our energy, zipping up, visualizing and setting boundaries, calling on support, um, pulling our field in. And I want to just guide us through a little like energy activation and visualization to kind of work with some of these practices and maybe just tune in to like feeling our energy. I think we're probably going to do some practices where we like grow and expand our field a little bit just to feel what that feels like. Because I'll also name too that while like pulling our energy in densely so that we're not like commingling with everyone is one protective way. And then another one is an expanding one, right? Where it's like almost like from our heart portal, sending energy out from our heart around us and creating a protective field in that way. And so we'll play with some of those through this energy activation. So all right, let's take a couple deep breaths. We're going to get settled in here. So feel free to lean back. If you want to lay down, you can do that. Mm. And if you feel comfortable, just let your eyes come to a close. And maybe place your hands somewhere on your body, in your lap or on your body. We're gonna just start breathing here, bringing our awareness down to our heart space as we breathe. Letting ourselves connect with that loving heart center. And as we breathe here and connect with our heart center, I invite you to imagine that your heart begins to glow warm, loving light. And this light radiating from your heart begins to expand bit by bit. This light radiating from your heart begins to expand. And soon it encompasses your whole torso. This light continues to expand out from your heart. Soon your entire neck, face, and head are also held in this loving light emanating from your heart. Continue breathing here, allowing that light to grow and expand. Maybe you notice what color this light is. Maybe you feel its frequency. Maybe it feels warm. This light emanating from your heart continues to grow and expand until your entire body is held in an orb of beautiful, loving light emanating from your heart. Continue to breathe here, just noticing how it feels to be held by your own loving heart energy. As you continue to breathe here, I invite you to imagine that this light continues to grow in all directions around you. This light emanating from your heart grows until it fills the entire room in which you sit, where you and your entire physical space are held now in your own loving energy. Breathe here, attuning to this energy, feeling what it feels like to be surrounded by your own love, by your own loving light. Mm. And as we breathe here, held fully by this loving energy emanating from our heart, I invite the Holy Fire Reiki to channel in and work with each of us. It channels in from above, melding with that loving light that emanates from your heart. You can imagine that it channels in through the crown of your head, moves in through your body, and then melds with your own loving heart, with the energy emanating from you. And with your permission, the Reiki supercharges that energy that surrounds you, that emanates from your heart, that holds you now. Continue breathing here, feeling the Reiki work with your own heart to place protective energy all around you. Energy moves in from above into your heart. The Reiki anchors all the way down into the earth below you, radiating on all sides. And as you continue to breathe here, held by the Holy Fire Reiki and the love that emanates from your own heart, I invite you to imagine that a protective force field of your choosing begins to grow from the earth around you, growing around you on all sides. This protective force field begins to grow and expand, moving up around you from below to all sides, in front and behind. This protective force field grows up, 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 surrounding your entire body with protective energy. And you get to decide where this force field is, whether it's nice and close, whether it's a little bit further out, or whether it is the size of the room where you sit. This protective force field is yours to meld, shape, and create. It continues to grow and grow on all sides, above and below, all the way around you. Feel this protective force field come online. Feel its protection 360 degrees all around you. Breathe here, feeling the many layers of protective energy around you now. And if you wish, I invite you to imagine that as you breathe, you can fill this protective energy up with your own life force, with your own energy. With every exhale, You're surrounded just a little bit more with your own protective light, till that entire force field around you is full of your own sovereign energy. Feel it emanating from your heart. Feel it radiating from the pores of your skin. Feel that protective energy flowing out and all around you, cascading around you, creating and fortifying that beautiful force field. And I'll give you a few more minutes here to breathe into this space, to play with this energy. Maybe you want to invite that loving Reiki energy to come closer around you rather than filling the whole room. Maybe you want to imagine that that protective force field is maybe just a millimeter from your skin. Give you a little space here to breathe and play with this energy that's around you, calling it closer in or allowing it to extend further out. Hmm. Hmm. Oh, and when you've got those protective boundaries, those force fields in a space that feels good, maybe you just want to breathe and experience the protection of this energy. Hmm. Hmm. And as we prepare to close this practice, I'll invite the Holy Fire Reiki to set a protective force field around each of us. Trusting that this force field is perfect for us and will allow that which is for our highest good to come through and will protect us from anything that is not in service to our highest good. I invite you to imagine that the heart protection, loving light that you sent out begins to shrink and come back to you until that light is so close to your body that it's radiating from your skin, allowing and inviting that light to continue to protect us, inviting our loving heart to continue to protect us here. And finally, inviting that force field to continue working with us, to continue protecting us. Knowing that if we ever want to unset any of these protections, that we can do so with our own intention, by asking, or by simply trusting that the force fields will stay as long as they are needed and dissolve at the perfect time. I invite you to take a nice deep breath in here, breathing out through your mouth to seal this practice. Whenever you feel ready, I invite you to just blink some light back into your eyes. Allowing yourself to land in your space by looking around. Maybe you want to bring some gentle movement to your body. Maybe you want to drop into your journal and record how this experience felt for you. I also want to create some space if anyone wants to share in the chat or come off mute and share how that experience felt for them. I see you're very relaxing and comforting.
I found it interesting to pull the energy in, because I have a tendency to go with like a 6-foot bubble or tube and not really think about having it be closer. And when we pulled it in, it was like felt like a second skin, just very gently caressing my body. It was nice.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, thank you for naming that. I think that's really true of a lot of folks who work with energy, right? And even maybe in America, right, where it's like bigger is better. And so we think, yeah, that is the only way. And yet sometimes what's called for is, yeah, like that second skin, like a jacket. I think of like, yeah, like a weighted blanket or something, right? Where like that kind of physical closeness sometimes offers the comfort and the protection that we need. Yeah, thank you. I also see, my cats waited until we were closing the space to try to open the door and join me. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, cats are definitely very aware of energy work, which is always fun. All right. Well, I don't have too much more for tonight. I want to say thank you for everyone who is here live and for everyone who watched the recording. I want to name again that this practice of protecting our energy is very much a practice, right? That the more that we do it, the easier that it becomes, the more natural feeling it becomes. Um, and the more that we practice, the more that we get to notice how the protection is working, right? We get to see, oh, interesting. I did this really conscious protection this morning, and my day went smoothly, or I didn't have to deal with a lot of BS at work. Oh, I forgot to do my protections, and everything, was coming out of the woodwork. And so it's just super important for us to kind of like take stock and take notice when we're doing these practices, because it can be really easy for our mental energy, our intellectual energy to say, this is a waste of time to do the zip up. What's that even doing? Or it's a waste of time to, visualize this egg around me. What's that even doing? But when we get to actually stack that evidence for how it actually is protecting us and creating feelings of comfort or relaxation, even in high stimulus or stressful situations, we can begin to see that these profound, simple but profound practices are really the difference between us being able to show up authentically and in alignment, and the difference between us feeling more manic and pulled in many directions. Protection um, can do so much for us. And I'll say again that even myself, right, in the high stress situations, it's so much easier to put all these practices on the shelf and say, I don't have time because I'm dealing with this stressful stuff. And it really does take that kind of higher self that to say, wait a second, I know we got a lot of stuff to take care of, but these these self-care practices, these protective practices, these energetic practices are still important, and we still need to make time for it, even if it looks like 5 minutes today or 3 minutes instead of 20 or an hour. Those simple, small practices can be really profound, because I'll name again that we've only been together for less than an hour. And we've done a couple different practices together that have left us feeling more relaxed and more calm and more tended. And so again, in America, we tend to think bigger is better, and so if we can't go big, what's the point? But I will say that with these protections, oftentimes it's the little things, right? The invoking of the protection before we start driving, before we leave the house, even if it's just one sentence, can make a huge difference in our day. um, yeah, so I invite you to continue practicing and playing with this. And for those of you who are not attuned to Reiki and would like to work with the Reiki and learn about how working with the Reiki can just kind of supercharge our own energy work and our own self care practices, I would love for you to join me in my next online Reiki healing training, which actually starts next Wednesday. We'll be meeting at the same time, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And we will go through an energy activation and attunement, and you'll get some one-on-one support and group support for how to work with this energy, how to work with our own energy, and how to work with it to protect ourselves and clear our energy and ground ourselves so that we can live lives that we love and live with intention, with purpose, with passion, with in alignment with ourselves, rather than kind of feeling pulled in different directions because of shoulds and expectations and all of these other external factors. The energy work can really help us to take responsibility for ourselves and reconnect with our own hearts, with our own desires, so that we can make decisions that feel aligned with what we actually want, as opposed to making decisions that feel aligned with what we should be doing. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me if you want to schedule a one-on-one call to talk about it, or if you want to just register. I'll include links for both in the chat in the video description. Um, and yeah, it's a really, really um, powerful workshop. Yeah. Uh, well, that is all that I have. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, my name is Kristen. I'm the founder of Roots of Radiance Reiki, a Reiki healer and teacher, and a spiritual life coach. And if you'd like to work more with me, please schedule a free discovery call, or register for my Reiki class. I'd love to be in contact with you and build community with you. Until next time, bye, y'all. Oh,